Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. In this session, I would talk about the role of content in other curriculum designs and content-based instruction. I hope and expect by the end of this session, you would be able to understand the role of content in CBI. Well, my dear students, language across the curriculum was a proposal for native language education that grew out of the recommendations of a British governmental commission in the mid-1970s. This particular report recommended a focus on reading and writing in all subject areas in the curriculum. Now, this reading and writing in all subject areas would, of course, use language as a tool for that or as a means for that, and not merely in the subject that is called language classroom or language arts. So, language is not to be taught as a separate course on language learning itself or as language art. Rather, it would be used in all the other subjects to teach it. Language skills should also be taught in the content subjects and not left exclusively for the English teacher to deal with. This was the recommendation of this particular commission. Now, this report, of course, influenced American education system, and the slogan, "Every teacher, an English teacher," became familiar to every teacher. Now, every teacher had to play a role of a language teacher. Every teacher had to teach language, though not directly, but through his or her particular subject. Subject matter texts appeared that included exercises dealing with language practice and the need for collaboration between subject matter teachers and the teachers who would deal with language teaching. So it's more like a collaborative work between the language teachers and the teachers of various subjects, and the textbooks of different subjects, for example, of geography, of history, of biology or chemistry, would include certain activities that would be language-based. In some cases, curricular material was produced that integrated subject matter and language teaching goals, such as the Singaporean primary pilot project in the 1970s classroom texts integrating science, math, and language study. So, all across the globe, not only in the USA, these kind of experiments were carried out where, under CBI, content-based instruction, different kinds of contents under different subjects would be taught, and they would be combined with other subjects and with language teaching. Another example is of immersion education that had a strong influence on the theory of CBI. Immersion education is a type of foreign language instruction in which the regular school curriculum is taught through the medium of that foreign language. The foreign language is the vehicle, or it is the tool for content instruction, and it is not the subject of as such instruction. The first immersion programs were developed in Canada in the 1970s to provide English-speaking students with the opportunity to learn French language. So basically what they would do is all the subjects are to be taught and are to be learned in French, and through this process, these English-speaking students would learn French language. Immigrant on-arrival programs are also examples of CBI. So typically they focus on the language for the newly arrived immigrants in a country that they need for their survival in that context. To learn how to deal with different kinds of real-world contents as a basis for social survival, this is the major task of these kind of immigrant on-arrival programs that prepare these immigrants to survive in those new social contexts. Design of such courses in Australia was among the first attempts to integrate notional, functional, grammatical, and lexical specifications built around particular themes and situations. So, how to use language for functional purposes or for notional purposes, how to have mastery of different grammatical or structural aspects of language, how to learn different lexical items. All this would be built around different themes and different situations that would be the contents outside the language classroom. A typical course would cover language needed to deal with immigration, bureaucracies, for example, or deal with finding accommodations, or shopping, or finding a job, so on and so forth. Another example is of the programs for students with limited English proficiency, that is SLEP, SLEP. So governmentally mandated programs to serve specifically or specially those children whose parents might be served by on-arrival programs, but more generally designed for any school-age students. So the new immigrants who would come and settle in some area, and the parents would take those on-arrival courses, content-based courses that would be taught in the spirit of CBI. Now, they, of course, would have young children as well, and these school-going children whose language competence is insufficient to participate in the school activities where they would take admissions. The purpose of these programs for students with limited English proficiency is to prepare these students to come to the level where in the normal schools with all other students they can cope up. Language for specific purposes, LSEP, is another example of this. It was a movement that seeks to serve the language needs for learners who need language in order to carry out specific roles, for example, as students, engineers, technicians, nurses, doctors, etc. And also, who need to acquire content and real-world skills through the medium of a second language rather than master the language for its own sake. So, it's more like preparing the learners to meet their roles in their lives as nurses, doctors, or as engineers, etc., than, to prepare them as being, students who have mastered a second language. So CBI being a content-based instructional methodology, it focuses more on the contents than, focusing on the language itself.